Hello and welcome to the Pompey Politics Podcast, the podcast where we discuss matters of international, national, and local importance in a calm, measured, and incurious way to get to the heart of the matter. I'm Ian Tiny Morris.
And I'm Simon Sainsbury. Welcome, everybody. Evening, Ian.
Good evening. And but we're local this week, aren't we? So we are talking about Portsmouth and its, shall we say, perhaps questionable air quality and what might be done about it. And as always with matters of such importance, rather than us two blathering on, we've got an array of knowledgeable guests and some. I don't like to use the word old friends of the podcast, but definitely some folk who we've heard from before.
Indeed, we do. And just before I go and introduce those, please do remember to engage with the podcast. If you're following us on YouTube, please do hit that subscribe button. If you are watching on Facebook, then give us a thumbs up. From either of those two platforms, you can give us a comment, and we'll see that. But without further ado, let's introduce our three air quality campaigners to the show. Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Hello there. So welcome, Viola, Rod, and Tim. Thank you very much for giving us part of your Sunday evening. So we really appreciate that. Let's get right into our questions. So the easiest way to do that is just to ask you to introduce yourselves. So if I'll go around the virtual room, if you like. Viola, would you mind going first?
Yeah, you probably know me from the Let's Stop Accident campaign, co-founder, still going on. So don't rest your case. We are still fighting it. We are still waiting. And I'm also the organizer of the Portsmouth Climate Choir and very, very much interested in the air and water quality of this city. And really, unfortunately, he's not here today, Paul Bleach, who started doing the Future for Fridays again in front of the civic offices and concentrates particularly on air pollution, which we will discuss during this podcast.
Fantastic. And right next to you is Rod. Hi, Rod.
Hello, I'm Rod Bailey. I'm a retired chartered surveyor, and I led a small group of people in Milton to do a neighbourhood plan. It's an evidence spatial plan, so it sets out policies for this part of Portsmouth. And because we have an air quality management area, we were keen to get to the roots of the issues with air quality locally and then look at it citywide, because you can't confine air pollution to one specific location.
No, it doesn't do as it's told like that. Quite agree. Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim Sherman-Chase. I've been, I'm the founder of Let Pompey Breathe, which has been a sort of collective campaigning organisation involving many of us who are here today and many other people. That's been running for about 7 or 8 years. I'm involved in Green Party stuff as well. So
fantastic.
Yeah. So thank you, Tim. And can I pose the first question to you, Tim, which is kind of how does Portsmouth air quality stack up against other cities? And guessing that it probably isn't great, otherwise your campaign wouldn't exist. What are the causes?
So the causes are from nitrogen dioxide being released and particulates being released into the air from various sources. And most of the more than half of it is from diesel engines, from diesel cars, lorries, HGVs, light goods vehicles, taxis, coaches. So that's the biggest concern. We've also got pollution coming in from the region area, a little bit coming from the port, pollution from central heating systems. So it all adds up to getting us a bit of a problem in Portsmouth because we're so densely built up. How we compare with other cities is we're not in the sort of the worst group, the top we're not in the top 10, but we're in the next sort of tier down as far as the government is concerned. So we were mandated to have a clean air zone, which has been running for a few years now. So it's quite bad. We've been out of legal compliance since 2010. So it's a bit of an issue. We'll talk about what problems it causes, I think, in a bit. But yeah, so it's definitely a concern, and it's equivalent of about 100 deaths in Portsmouth per year. So it's quite a big thing to be concerned about.
Thank you, Tim. And I guess Viola, Rod, your perspectives on air quality in Portsmouth and where the causes might be?
Well, I agree with Tim. Air pollution and all pollution is a consequence. It's a product of waste, and we've got a lot of inhabitants on Portsea Island. So as Tim says, we've got a lot of waste coming from us, our habits. And we have, yes, we've got traffic. We've got an Isle of Wight ferry port. We've got a naval base and a continental ferry port. So it's not just as though the traffic's an issue. And then, as Tim says, we've still got a lot of emissions from gas fires. And there's an emerging issue, really, because we used to have things called smokeless zones because of the pollution effects of the smogs in London in the 1950s. And Portsmouth had some smokeless zones. We don't have any now, but there's an increasing usage of solid fuel log burners, and they are highly contaminative. And what we need to do is think about the consequences. And I always think with air pollution, I'm talking about waste, it's an inevitability, really, because if you've got fossil fuel burning transport, you've got heating, and you've got industrial processes in the naval base and shipping. Shipping is a huge contributor to diesel. Tim talked about diesel, but the emissions from ships is enormous. So what we had was, as Tim said, 15 years ago, a directive to reduce, or there were legal limits set to meet. And Portsmouth had, at one time, 13 air quality management areas. It rescinded 9 of them and has left 5. Well, one of those, we've done a spatial plan for Milton, and when we started it, this is the Eastern Road and Velder Avenue and Milton Road near the junction with Rodney Road. Back in 2014-15, we weren't compliant with those limits either. We've narrowly got underneath them and we've gone up above, but they're not quite so bad now. But the point about environmental legislation is that there's this thing called a precautionary principle, whereas if you can take preventative measures to reduce the risk of serious harm, even when the scientific evidence isn't conclusive, you should be taking them. So since 2010, we've had a legal requirement to meet air quality objectives. And later on, we might come on to talk about how the UK standards are far lower than the World Health Organization standards. We've actually not done that. We've not managed to do that consistently across the city. And the UK government was taken to the High Court 3 times because we in the UK actually didn't control pollution. And that control was passed down to local authorities. It's a bit harsh on them because actually it's part of modern society. But somebody has to try and be responsible for it. I mean, we should all be responsible for it. So Viola and I, we cycle, we've got solar panels and things like this. But actually to do that in Portsmouth, throughout Portsmouth, is really hard. And we've got Peter Candlish is going to come along and talk about transport, because transport is one thing where we could probably should have done better.
Yeah, you make some really interesting points there, Rob, and I definitely some will pick up on later in the podcast. And just to close this question out, Viola, anything to add to those
Yes,
two
I think
perspectives?
so. There was an environmental report in April published by the government. And I think very important for us to know, we've been talking about a climate crisis, which now has gone into climate breakdown. We've talked about biodiversity loss and biodiversity crisis, but they've actually added a pollution crisis as well. So that shows you the real emphasis and things we have not really dealt with is pollution. And if we really look at it, pollution in the first place would actually lead to climate change. So we need to tackle pollution in one way or another. We haven't got a choice on this, but we have to find ways how we can work together. How everybody, the council, the residents, the government, we've got to find ways to improve it. And just today, because I'm going to the mass lobby on Wednesday to see Amanda Martin, my MP, I got a little leaflet sent with information about Portsmouth North, and I found that really interesting. And interestingly enough, I just looked at it, and I've written down the sort of facts, and I think that is really important for us to know. And it isn't just in Portsmouth North, of course, as we know, no boundaries for air and water pollution. The nitrous dioxide levels are, as we know, about the WHO guidelines in 63 neighborhoods just in Portsmouth North. The same as for the particulate PM 2.5 particles, again, above WH guidelines, again, in 63 neighborhoods. And there comes an interesting fact. 10,159 constituents in Portsmouth North suffer from respiratory diseases like asthma or COPD. Now, if we say we have about 100,000 people living in Portsmouth North, if we square it, Portsmouth North, Portsmouth South, that means 10% in this city. So I think that should shake us all up and really make sure that we talk about, not just talk about this problem, but find solutions. And hopefully we are talking about that as well for our city, and not just for our city. Like Rod said, it is a city for the country and worldwide.
Oh, thank you, Viola. That's very helpful in framing the scale of the problem. So, Simon.
Thank you very much. So the critical kind of part about air quality, and you've talked about the multitude of contributors to the issues with it there, but what are the health impacts that you're referring to? You talked about COPD there, but what are those, and who does it most affect?
It affects children because they're the most vulnerable. It affects elderly folk like me and Viola. But what it does is it's a cost. Southampton University did some research recently, 2024 maybe, and it said that a reduction of microparticulates by 1 microgram per cubic meter increases GDP, this is a European study, by 0.8%. So not only do we improve productivity by being more healthy, we also allow people to enjoy their lives a bit more. And we're saving an awful lot of cost to the NHS. In later life, I've become mildly asthmatic. My daughter is quite chronically asthmatic, and so is my granddaughter. And actually, that's no accident. It's just a consequence of living in a kind of a toxic environment. Yes, we've had I talked, didn't I, about the smokeless control zones. We're not as bad as the 1950s, but we've got a rather more insidious pollution, I think, because we can't see it. You know, when I was a lad, about until I was about 20, we were burning coal fires where I used to live, and it was horrible. It was muggy. It was horrible in winter. It's, you know, a still kind of day. We're not quite like that, but we learned. What we did was we stopped burning coal. We've gone over to gas. We've known that traffic is a contributor to pollution, but we've allowed the increase of traffic in this city to expand exponentially, disproportionately to the population side. Here's a useful stat that I often trot out, but in closely aligns with the 2011 census. In 2011, the population in Portsmouth was estimated to be about 205,000. And in those days, Department for Transport had 109,000 vehicle registrations in the city. We've now got an emerging plan, local plan based on the 2021 census, and the population's gone up to about marginally under 210,000. Well, the vehicle registrations haven't. They've gone up to 129,000. Look at that. That's a far bigger increase in vehicles than there is population. And in my past life as a chartered surveyor, I worked on lots of from the other side. I used to work in a naval base. Even in the 1990s, we recognised that traffic was a problem. So we said, or the council did, something along the lines of, it's not practical or desirable to allow traffic to go unrestrained. That was as a background to the spatial plan for Portsmouth in 2001. Here we are in 2025, and we've had an increase in traffic of an enormous scale. So there's been a failure, and why we wanted to do a spatial plan for Milton, because we thought, well, actually, just here, we've got an air quality management area. We've got green spaces. If we can try and reduce traffic and improve green spaces, it gives the city, especially us though, more of a chance, more of a healthy outlook. And I don't think, as I said, I don't think we can control domestic fuel. We can't really do much about emissions in the port. I know the council are trying to. In the end, it comes down to the ship owners. Are they going to turn their engines off and plug into the national grid or the council's power supply? It depends on cost, doesn't it? But I think we've had a missed opportunity, and we've got a real missed opportunity with that clean air zone because it didn't go wide enough. Mm-hmm. And that has consequences for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Tim, you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, you're asking about the health, the more direct impacts of on our health. So the studies have been looking into air pollution and what conditions they cause. So there's been a lot of research done. They've been finding strong links to asthma, heart disease, stroke, lung cancer, and they keep finding more and more conditions that are linked. It's a problem because it affects, as Rod was saying, it affects people are still growing and developing, children that actually could give them developmental disorders, and the elderly and people who've got pre-existing conditions. So you've got asthma, it's going to be triggered a lot more by the air pollution. It makes it 100 times worse. So it's a real concern. So if you got saying air pollution was estimated to kill about 100 lives in Portsmouth per year. It's actually shortening, the equivalent of shortening everybody's lives by 100 lifetimes is actually what it means. But what concerns me is that the council and the government are looking at reducing the pollution from what it is to the legal limit, and that requires a drop of about 10% in pollution. So even if we do a drop of 10%, that's going to save us about 10 lives out of the 100. So we're still having 90 people. Even if we meet the legal goal, we'll still be having 90 people killed in Portsmouth per year, which is, I don't think is acceptable either. So it's just the targets, as we were saying, are just not ambitious enough. There's no long-term plan. There's only short-term planning, saying we're going to meet this legal target. It's only going to take a small drop in pollution, relatively small drop in pollution, but we're missing the bigger picture here in terms of public health.
Thank you. Viola, anything to add on the health consequences?
I certainly do, because I think it's a ticking time bomb, because at the moment, it's only, if you want to say, only 90 people affected by it who die, or 100 people who die. And I think because air pollution is cumulative as well, in a sense, so we are going to have more housing targets put upon us to build more houses, with which more cars will be coming, and therefore more pollution. And so it's like an ongoing sort of increase, really, of pollution, rather than decrease, which we are aiming for. So I think everybody should be concerned about what's going on in the city, and it is all, as we know, interconnected. So if you ask our city to build 1,200 homes, as we've been told, per year, you can imagine how many more cars that will mean. You can imagine how many more congestion, how many more cars will be in the streets. And so where are we, and how are we going to reduce our air pollution, which we are going to struggle, or we are struggling already anyway? So, and to come back just what Rod said, I read, and I remember actually Jared Vernon Jackson mentioning it in one of our meetings we had at Milton Neighborhood Forum, the increase of car ownership is 17% 2023 or 2022, whereas beforehand, the 10 years, it was 5%. And of course, that is concerning when we know that we still have diesel cars. We can't go all electric. We know it's a problem, as we haven't got the system laid out for it yet. But, it will mean more pollution for the city. And I think something very, very much, I agree with Rod, it's been underestimated, is the wood burner. Even environmentalists like George Monbiot, who actually thought 10 years ago he did the right thing, he got a wood burner and he was very happy. And I remember reading an article in The Guardian how polluting wood burners are. And I think that has got to be put more into the public opinion and the public mind, and actually people have to be educated, and I don't think we've done enough on the education of the public in this city to take them with us.
Okay, that's very interesting. I mean, I won't kind of read through them now, but we're getting kind of comments around actually what can people do, so kind of pin that thought. But before we get what we'll do now is we've got an interview from Peter Candlish, who's as we said earlier, he's a Portsmouth councillor who's the cabinet lead for traffic and transportation. So although traffic and transportation isn't obviously the only root cause of the air pollution, it's certainly a part of it. But we were able to have an interview with Peter earlier on today. So I'm just gonna play that, and then we can come back and comment on that.
Like any big city, Portsmouth does have pockets where its air quality is not as good as we would like it to be. Actually, compared to many places, we are in not bad shape. No level of air pollution is good for people's health, and we are really focusing on trying to drive it down. Really built up areas where there are lots of vehicles will naturally tend to be air quality hotspot problems. Truthfully, are taking a pretty much city-wide, council-wide approach to dealing with air quality, because it does come through in so many different places. So there is a public health angle, There is a greening the city angle because more greenery, more trees really helps to improve the air quality of a particular area. And of course, as a cabinet member for transport, I'm very aware of the contribution that transport within the city makes to air quality problems. The clean air zone was deliberately set up to encompass the area with the biggest air quality problems, and forcing large commercial vehicles, which were also heavily polluting vehicles, to not go into the city centre will definitely have made a contribution. But truthfully, I don't think personally that it's the biggest contributor to the success that we're now having in actually improving air quality in the city. The biggest single factor is probably something that is outside of the council's control. It is just the rate at which vehicles are improving. They're getting cleaner all the time. So a new diesel car emits less pollution than one that was built 15 years ago. So there's a natural evolution and reduction in the amount of pollutants. And as we now start to see electric vehicles come into the city, they are even cleaner. And that's one of the reasons why we've really supported the introduction of electric buses. There are now 62. We're putting in over 300 new EV chargers. Something like 96% of the vehicles entering the zone are now compliant. So that is helping, but I don't think it's the biggest single thing. In the last year, we managed to increase the number of bus trips by about 17%. We're always trying to push people to be walking and cycling and other forms of wheeling to get from one place to the other, because it's good for their own individual health. But it also, again, it switches them to a form of moving around the city that generates less pollution. So we are refreshing a network of quiet routes around the city. We're introducing more bus lanes across the city. Now, bus lanes are obviously great for buses, but they also provide a slightly more protected space for cyclists. And then there are, smaller practical things like bike hangers, things like tactile pavements, dropped curbs. We've got some good initiatives now where in key shopping areas, we're actually making it so that it's a seamless, smooth, level surface to go from one area of shops across a road and into the next area of shops. That slows vehicles down, which is a safety benefit, but actually it just makes it nicer to be walking around those areas. And these things take time. They're all small but important steps that we just need to keep on doing year after year to make the city a better place. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, we're actually addressing the air quality issues that we started this conversation with. People see both the commercial port and also the naval dockyard as being a key source of pollutants. But the recent work that's been done in the last year has shown actually that they're a relatively small contributor to the overall air quality issues in the city. Rather than having ships tied up at berths, having to use big diesel engines, they're able to connect up to the national grid and take what is increasingly green electricity and use that to maintain themselves in the port. By the end of next year, we're likely to be below the government's current targets for air quality everywhere. There is much more that we can and should be doing.
Brilliant. So thank you to Councillor Candlish for coming and giving us that interview. So having heard what Peter's had to say there, I guess, what's your response and what more do you think the administration, perhaps government, should be doing? And can I address that first to Viola, please?
Okay. I've taken a few little notes. Now, interestingly enough, last year, I remember an article on the BBC website actually talking about the worst polluted cities in the country. Now, I happen to remember the order of the first worst polluted. So we had London #1, followed by Rushmore. Third was Portsmouth, fourth was Southampton. So the question, of course, here is, how does that go along with our improved air pollution, not report yet, let's say information we just received? So that would be one question I would ask Peter if he was there. Yeah, because we have got these facts which have been pointed out to us. Now, in terms of the clean air zone, I have to say I agree entirely with Rod. We had a choice. We could have had that clean air zone much bigger for the city. It wasn't chosen. We could have included private vehicles, we could have included vans, we could have included all sorts of vehicles, which other cities have done, and their result in terms of improving the air pollution is much better than for Portsmouth. Now, one question I have again, when we think of the solar panels now put on the port, which I really celebrate, and I think it's a fantastic effort, but we have to ask ourselves, so how many ships, because they are enormous, we've got cruise ships, we've got ferries, can actually be charged at one time with those solar panels? And it is not, it really is a question of interest. Let's say we have got five big ships at the same time in the harbor. So how many would actually be able to be charged by the solar panels we have, and how many would still have to have their engines running? That is an interesting question. I don't know. There's an engineer who might be able to help us with that. Now, and one last thing, I've read the document from the 24th of June about the clean air zone, and I was disappointed by the government, because I have to say for Portsmouth City Council pointed out that it would be great to receive some funding for educating the public about what needs to be done, and the government said it would not be really valuable to do that, because the money spent on that would be not beneficial. And I think that is really disappointing, because I think there is certainly something we could do, and we can talk about some more sort of practical measures in a minute when I pass on first. Yeah,
no, that would be lovely, Viola. So, Rod, I think you acknowledge that that the passing down or the delegating of authority to local the local administration was a little bit harsh. What do you think from what you've heard? What should the administration be doing, and what perhaps should local national government be weighing in on?
I'll go back to what I said about the precautionary principle, I think, because where I think the local authority has consistently gone wrong is it's reacting to foreseeable events. And Southampton have introduced a plug-in option for visiting ships, but the university research said that only 10% of visiting ships used it because of the cost. So I think we were saying, I think if I understood Peter correctly, he said this is national grid. Well, one of the problems that we have got from central government is electricity is disproportionately expensive. And I don't know enough detail about how the port is going to be charged for this. But the local authority does have the means, because it's been tasked with doing so, to manage poor air. Whereas if you think about that precautionary principle, what you try and do is prevent the risks in the first place. And Tim and I go back, 7 or 8 years, Tim, and we looked at the clean air zone when it was being talked about, and we could see that, as Viola has said, private cars weren't going to be captured. But when you looked at all the data that the council had produced, private cars were producing more than half of the pollution levels. But I think this reactive part is the bit that frustrates me most, because coming at this from a planning perspective, we knew we had polluted air back in the early noughties. And we do things like grant an approval to expand the car parking at the White Link car terminal. Whereas the logical thing to have done would have been to say, well, look, if you can't accommodate the vehicles that you think you need, could you please go up the road to the Continental Ferry Port? Measures like this could reduce significantly the amount of cars coming down at the M275. The other thing is that clean air zone goes up to, but doesn't include Fratton Road. And yet Fratton Road and London Road and Kingston Road, a lot of people live there. The Portsmouth Academy School abuts the boundary of it, and it's always been a pollution hotspot. And I think it's this kind of reaction. And it is true to say that there is a transition from electric vehicles from fossil fuel diesel and petrol vehicles to electric. But I don't see that we're going to be able to charge. We're not going to have the capacity to charge all these electric vehicles, and people aren't going to switch to electric unless they can afford it. Yeah, and unless it's practical for them. And I don't think it will be. And that's where the reaction part comes in, because when Viola talked about the unrealistic housing targets, they've been unrealistic for about the past 25 years.
Yeah.
And when we have unrealistic targets that aren't fulfilled, we have pollution. I think
they're good points, Rob. We're going to come on to solutions in the next couple of questions. So just in the interest of time, I would like to give Tim just a moment there to come back on that in terms of your thoughts, Tim, on how the administration's doing, and what more do you think practically they should be doing?
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting what Peter Cavendish said. We do actually we welcome the improvements that have been put in. So there've been good cycleway measures, some nice crossings have been put in, but it's the scope of the works that is of concern. So we need to massively accelerate the process, I think. I know it's not going to be easy or cheap, shall we say, but I just think the ambition needs to be greatly increased. So, I mean, Rod's right in saying some of the polluted areas that should have been included in the clean air zone weren't included. We've got the least strict clean air zone in terms of vehicle types in the country, and so the clean air zone is a sort of a tool that we haven't properly utilized. Well, we've also got the commitment to get to net zero by 2030, and that includes transport. And I haven't seen any plan to achieve that. And the council is talking about removing the clean air zone as soon as it's practical, because it's going to cost them money. Especially if they run it the way they are running it at the moment. Only a few vehicles are being charged, so that doesn't bring any income, so they can't afford to run it, so they want to remove it. Well, that's the opposite of probably what we should be doing when we want to achieve net zero. So we need to take some difficult choices, unfortunately. So we need to probably ban whole classes of vehicles from certain areas of Portsmouth or all of Portsmouth, and then give people a realistic alternative to actually be able to get around the city. At the moment, cycling in Portsmouth is not safe, generally speaking. So that's one of the things that needs to be addressed. I'm thinking pedestrianisation hasn't been really fully realised. There could be large areas, I'm thinking, around Old Portsmouth and down by the dockyard, and maybe other shopping areas. I know there's also vehicles need to travel through, but we need to focus on just getting the goods that people need into the places. The private transport should be dealt with using active transport, that is cycling, buses, walking, electric alternatives, basically.
No, thank you, Tim. And you touched there on the money question, and I guess that's a beautiful segue, Simon.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. It's almost like we planned it. So yeah, the next kind of critical question is, how do we get there then, and where does that money come from? Did you want to pick up, as you were on that subject, Tim, and pick up that?
Yeah, I can do that. So one of the biggest factors to remember is that we're being burdened by the health cost on the health service by quite a large amount. I saw just on a quick search, we're talking about 8 to 20 billion pounds a year is being spent on health, on air quality related illness in the NHS. So if we try and reduce air pollution, greatly reduce it, we should be seeing some significant savings on that regard. In that regard, the other thing is, like, if people spending not on, it's actually costs quite a bit to run a private car, and spending it on other, if the alternative was affordable, we could be actually having a great sort of source of income to keep public transport running. The trouble is that, well, okay, buses have been capped, trains are still super expensive, so there needs to be more work needs to be done there. The clean air zone we mentioned is one of the most lax in the country. That could be a source of income, although it does have running costs associated. So it's a multi-pronged approach.
Rod or Viola, did either of you want to have anything to contribute on where the money's coming from?
The cost part of this is critical because we're talking about money for good health, aren't we? Effectively, money for a cleaner environment. But actually, look at it the other way. A dirty environment and dirty air is costing us. And there are some simple things you might want to do in terms of traffic and cars when this doesn't cost anything. But in our Milton neighbourhood plan, we reduce parking standards. What that means is where you've got, say, 4 one-bed units, we allow 3 car spaces. The council has 4. Where you've got 6 3-bed units, the council allows 4 3-bed units, the council allows 6 spaces, and we allow 5. And the same, it goes on exponentially like that. But little tweaks like this are making the shift from cars, and it's not just, I'm thinking cost here, it's not just about whether they're diesel, petrol or whatever, or electric, because what we're doing is we're saying, look, get on your bike, get on and walk. And that actually, we've got an obesity problem in this city. The amount of obese children is shocking, and we've got a lot of obese adults. We're way above the healthy standard in the UK. So by just simple things like that, they don't cost anything. It doesn't cost anything to just reduce the parking levels, because then you're sort of encouraging people. Actually, it's getting harder to park our cars, and we've got a space issue anyway. So with all these houses that we're worried about, they're going to take up space. Let's free up more space so that we can have more. We can have more walking, and we should think too. Getting back to the planning aspect, because that's really my background. There is a move towards these 15-minute neighbourhoods where facilities can be more easily accessible by foot or by cycle, so you can walk in 15 minutes to somewhere. But I don't see that happening, and this isn't the council's fault. This is about land values, really. We've got a problem in this country where to release land, the vendor, the owner of that land, wants to get the highest price. And so what they do is they say, well, we want the highest price. And the council says, well, you've got to have make highway improvements, and you've got to have affordable housing. And then they say, they get round to it, it's not viable. And there is a problem there, because actually, if there's a rule that says you've got to have more walking and cycling infrastructure, and the development's got to pay for it, then pay for it. Don't turn around and say, at the end of the day, it's not viable, because you're a business, you work it out. And I think that doesn't cost money. It doesn't cost us money. And it's something that I'd like to see more positive. I keep I've said it before, but I think the council's too reactive. We're too reactive to easily foreseeable events. So yeah, the bus, we could increase bus unit usage with freer travel. I think actually things like buses and trains should be subsidised more. But we have got a kind of behavioural problem by relying too much on mechanised transport, and we don't need it here. We're a flat city.
Okay, thank you. I'm just kind of conscious of time and us having a couple of questions left. Viola, was there anything you quickly wanted to add in on where the
Yeah,
money's
if I
coming
just
from?
give you perhaps an example, I
Thank you.
lived 29 years in Berlin. I know it's capital, or, became capital. I never owned a car. And the reason why I never owned a car were twofold. Number one, public transport was absolutely brilliant and is still absolutely brilliant. And number two, car owners had to pay. They have to pay now for their parking in front of their house. My parents live in a blocks of flats and there's car parking there, but they have to pay monthly for their car parking space. I know we might say, and we now again, we say in social injustice comes in for those who have got money, they can still afford it and they can do it. But at least you have an opportunity. You have enough public transport to be able to go flexibly around, and you don't need a car. And if you do want a car, you pay for it. Another very interesting one, many, many years ago, I remember in the 70s or 80s, I mean, my parents have told me, I can't remember, but there were like Saturday free car afternoons or the whole day where cars were not allowed to drive. So there was no car for some time. Now, I'm not saying that we are becoming totally radical, but I also know from conversations with councillors that particularly the car use is often a debate and a very, very delicate issue when it comes to being voted in again for the next election. And car use is one of those. So we have to look at ways where we say public transport. I know we have increased buses, electric buses, and we made it better, but it's still not good enough. But if we increase car parking, whatever you would like to, wherever, maybe in front of your house, you even have to pay, there's where the money could come in from. And perhaps people would think twice whether they have a car. But there is, as I say, obviously the difficulty with those who have and have got money, they can still do it, and those who haven't, they won't. So therefore, I think what I said earlier on education is really important for people to recognize. By doing what we are doing, we are accelerating climate breakdown even more. And I have to say it that blunt. If we continue as we do, it will be even faster. And we see it now. We have the hottest June ever on record in this country. We have had not a lot of water. And I think all those things are, as we know, connected. And pollution is one of the big issues. Another thing, my husband and I, and then I won't stop because I've got lots of ideas. 20-mile zone in the whole city. Apparently somebody looked at it and that would reduce definitely as well some of the pollution. Car-free afternoon. Some of the electric chargers, I happen to actually invest in a second-hand electric car because I know not everybody can get around on bike, not everybody can walk, and I know it's difficult. I see my neighbors on crutches or on their frames, and it's really hard to get around the city. So electric chargers I have watched around my area not working. Now, what's that good if you have an electric car?
I'm really sorry, Viola, to cut you off, but I'm so sorry. We are kind of running out of time, and we've got two questions left. And this question was about where does the money come from, and none of those things are helping us kind of square that circle. I know there's lots to talk about on the topic, and absolutely, this has got to be something we come back to, so we can spend more time on going into some of the weeds on this. So I'm sorry to kind of have to do that. We, the comments that we're getting, we're seeing about kind of various things that people are finding in the city that are working, about some things that the public transit do work, the park and ride works, but there are still people that choose to bring a car into the city even when they have kind of viable options. So
that leads me that leads me to the next question, Simon,
Thank you.
which is really, I mean, how do you take the people with you? I mean, Tim's used the word ban. We talked about car-free afternoons. Um, there is that element. I live in Copner. I've got a flat-fronted house. How am I going to charge my electric vehicle? I already spend hours driving round and round to try and find a parking space. I guess most people agree on the need for the big picture, but I guess when it comes down to, yeah, I agree there should be less cars, but I've got a very good reason for why I own mine. So how do these kind of ideas that you're talking about or touched upon, how do they land with the public, and how do we take the people with us? And can I ask that first to Tim, please?
Yes. No, it's an interesting question, and I think I can just imagine that the comments and the people listening in, both like myself and Ron Viola, are all, you could say, environmentalists, and people are saying, "Whoa, how does this apply to my everyday life? I'm just trying to survive here, do the basics. I need to get to work. I need to get the children to so and so." Yeah, I totally understand that. It's difficult, and we have to provide realistic alternatives and to actually show that's a viable, to see a way of doing it. If our streets were safer, we could get around a lot more easily. I mean, what I really want to emphasize, like, is, there's people think about it as like saying it's a war on motorists or a war on cars, and I'm trying not to, like, that's not the framing that I really would like. I think people should think of us being, we might be drivers sometimes, but we're also pedestrians, and we're also cyclists, and we're also, whatever, I'll take the bus. It's a case of it's not actually victimizing people. We don't want to victimize people. We want to convert them to doing it a different way. And yes, like, change is not comfortable necessarily. I'm saying, like, I wish we had an alternative, and I think we've just been sold this lie again and again by the government, saying we can get to net zero without much change in our personal lives. We can, it's not going to be a big deal. We'll just buy electric cars. It's like, we do have to make changes that are actually impacting our lives and everyday routine. And what as Rod said, somebody was saying earlier, we need to manage, like, saying how far we need to go to get to somewhere. Why do we need to go to a supermarket which is so far away when we could actually have things a lot closer to where we live? It's all interconnected. So yeah, I probably missed out a few things that I want to say there.
No,
That's the summary of it.
I think that's a really good points, Tim, and I guess so. Rod, if I can just no, I'm going to throw to Viola, as you were third last time. So Viola, how can you take people with you? How does this not come across as the sort of environmentalists tutting and judging the car user and the people, as Tim, I thought, put it, look, I'm just trying to live my life, get my family to school and earn my living, and an essential part of that is the car. I can't go and walk 10 minutes and wait for a bus, and that takes double the time it takes my car. How do you get those people on your side?
No, I mean, I agree with you. We know if you have I was a teacher in my time. I had my car, and I still have an electric car. And it was impossible to get there on time somewhere when you wouldn't just jump in your car, because if you worked an hour away, no public transport available there, etc., etc. So I do know about the difficulties, you have without a car. I know there are some people who never had a car, but nobody can be an absolute purist. But I think the first thing is to really think twice. When you don't have to use your car, don't use it. And I've worked on that myself, It was always easy. There was a time I just want to go there, I just go there. But now I do think twice about that, and I walk perhaps to the allotment, or I walk down to Milton to the shops. I mean, of course, like Tim said, if we had more local shops, I mean, it is a global thing, isn't it? The big supermarkets are further away. People have to take their cars. They haven't got time. It's always rushing. Everything is rushing. We've become such a fast living society now that we do 100,000 things on the same day. And that's so difficult. And I totally, it is not like Tim says, a war on cars. I think it is here today for us to think about these things, to consider them, because we need to improve our environment. We know that. Otherwise, we will all suffer. And the debate is a first, really for me, it's a first sort of chance. It isn't pointing fingers. It isn't do this or do that. It's just ideas. How can we do it together and work together? That's the way I see it.
Lovely. And Rob, very quickly, because we're almost out of time. Anything you want to just chip in there?
I think it's all said. I mean, a behaviourist would say, well, to change behaviour, it's you can nudge them a bit, or you can penalise them. And I think the council has got a difficult job. It's not really the council's responsibility. I know they're responsible for ensuring that the air is clean and safe and meets legal limits within their area, but we share that responsibility. But the nudging part of this, when we had COVID and nobody was going around, the air was so much cleaner, and actually people went out into public spaces. And I think if we could just, as Viola says, maybe slow down, but here we should be asking the children. My childhood was different. I could play in the streets. And that was such a nice thing to be able to do. We shared streets, and we don't share streets now, do we?
No, a very good point, Rob. And as I say, we are very close to being out of time. And I know there's going to be many more issues for us to cover here, and we will come back and put another show in either later in the year or very early next year. If I can just pass to Simon for a very quick summary from you for kind of what comes next. Simon.
Yeah, so literally that. So what's next for the campaign, and how can people get involved? How can they find out about the things that they can do? Because we can't list them all here because we haven't got time, and we'd love to carry them. But what can people do to get involved? What Facebook group should they join up to? What should they do?
And we're looking for one sentence answers.
Check out my blog, Let Pompey Breathe, also Southsea Clean Air and Streets, and put pressure on your representatives.
Brilliant, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Okay.
Yeah, put pressure on your representatives. Agree.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's what they're there for.
Yes, and don't forget it when it comes to the ballot box, eh? Don't vote for someone that is against cycle lanes and stuff like that, I guess.
And don't forget, we are all in that together. Let's work together on this. That's the important bit, yeah? Cooperation rather than fighting and pointing fingers, okay?
And I think that's a fabulous place to end it. Viola, thank you. Yeah, thank you as always. So, no, it's been as I say, so much to unpack, and we probably were over ambitious trying to do it all in an hour, but we'll be back again later in the year. So thank you. You've been listening to the Pompey Politics Podcast. I've been Ian Tiny Morris.
I've been Simon Sansbury. Our guests have been Viola, Rod and Tim. Thank you very much for sharing your evening and trying energetically to squeeze all of that into what we can. We are going to have to come back to it. Please don't forget to like, follow, subscribe and comment so that you don't miss out on future episodes. But we'll be back next week at 6:27 and we'll see you then.
Yep. Catch you later.
Bye.
Don't forget to like, follow and comment on Facebook, or comment and subscribe on YouTube. Find us on all the social media platforms: Facebook, X, YouTube, Threads, LinkedIn.